I'm Abigail Gamble, and I'm reporting live from Calgary for Innovation Week. And tonight I am joined by Jennifer Jensen. Thank you so much for joining. Jennifer is the Executive Director of the Calgary Innovation Coalition. Thank you for being here today. Thank you. Let's talk about the state of innovation in Calgary. Can you set the tone and benchmark where you're at and talk to me about where you think you need to go next?
It's a great question. I mean, Calgary isn't classified as an emerging ecosystem. We have supported the Startup Genome project, which is an international benchmarking assessment, and they've put Calgary on the top 30 emerging ecosystems, which, is great, but what does that mean? And so really it's interesting when we assess it with other ecosystems that like Waterloo or like Silicon Valley is way on the one side. But if we look at Waterloo or, others in Europe or Asian countries, we see that Calgary can be classified as a teenager mentality. We're a little bit scrappy. There's a lot happening here, and we're moving rapidly at this incredible pace. So yeah, it's really exciting to see where we're going, but it's like just this influx of talent, of organizations, and all of these factors that contribute to the growth of the ecosystem itself.
Yeah. What do you think is working, and what do you think you need to work on?
Well, so the CSE actually did a internal research project this last year where we interviewed around 100 stakeholders. It was from governments, entrepreneurs, various ecosystem players to really understand like what is happening on different levels. And we did this to really understand the gaps and the opportunities that are happening in Calgary. We noticed that there are some emerging, I wouldn't say emerging, but like consistent. There are consistent dialogues on certain things. Like, as much as we claim to be a collaborative ecosystem, there still are very much, siloed or, what's the word I want to say? Like, just organizations are working in silos more so than, would be ideal. What would be ideal is if we just really wrapped around entrepreneurs and lifted them up together. So I think that's one thing that we're really looking towards for the future strategy for the CIC and for Calgary is how do we get to that stage? How do we support entrepreneurs as more of a container approach? Another one is there's the scale-up gap. And so we put a lot of money and funding into startups. But do we have the assets and resources to support companies when they're growing? It's very interesting. Like, do we have the talent that can support scale-ups? Do we have the leadership? Do we have the assets? Do we have the customers? And do we think globally is another big thing. So I think a lot of times we hear like our companies leave. Well, why? Because they don't have customers and they don't have access to investments. And so really like how do we support companies here on a global trajectory?
Yeah, absolutely. Your North Star goal is to support the creation and acceleration of more than 1,000 tech startups in Calgary by 2031. Where are you on that journey, and why specifically 1,027?
It's a really great question, and I would really have to refer to a few of the folks that preceded me to really understand, because this came from a combination of Calgary Economic Development, Platform Calgary, and the CIC coming together to think like this is the goal. But I can tell you that we are 90% on that route in different ways. And so we measure startups, companies 1 to 5. We measure companies from 5 to 10, et cetera, et cetera. And we're doing well in a lot of those categories. And so we're not far off.
Yeah, that's exciting. Now, you work with 7 other regional innovation networks across Alberta to deepen innovation impact and success. What do you share, and what have you learned by taking this kind of multi-regional approach?
Yeah, So the Regional Innovation Network was actually set up by Alberta Innovates, and I think it's a really special network of, well, for lack of better words, regions. But it started with the southern regions, and I think like just as tests, and then just expanded and grew. I personally meet with the other 7 regional innovation network managers twice a month. We do lots of collaborative projects. But what's really interesting is that we're all very different in like what specializations that entrepreneurs can receive and what assets are there in those regions to support those entrepreneurs. So for example, RINSA, the Regional Innovation Network of Southern Alberta, has a very large agricultural presence. They're also very interconnected with Indigenous populations. And so they are very much a role model for us in certain ways. And then we have other regions like Grand Prairie Regional Innovation Network, and there's also agriculture, but there's really interesting innovations coming out of that region. So yeah. Edmonton has more of is really strong with their post-secondaries and life sciences. So we all, I think, bring assets to one another. I refer a lot of my clients to Red Deer Polytechnic because they have a manufacturing facility. And so it's really that connection point to support entrepreneurs the best we can across the entire province, no matter where they come from.
I love that collaboration. And actually, that leads to my next question. We know that innovation thrives on collaboration. How do you encourage cross-sector partnerships, and what role do you think traditional industries like, say, energy play in the broader innovation ecosystem?
Yeah, I love this question so much because, again, like when we're looking at gaps and opportunities, this is also one of those. We see like Calgary, I'll say Alberta. Let's say Alberta has just like such a strong knowledge in energy and transferable skills and agriculture. And so I think it's just really a no-brainer to use that knowledge and help intersect innovation technology with corporate. And so we always look for ways to engage. You know, how do we engage with corporation? How do we engage with industry? How do we bridge these gaps? And how do we use these assets? Because there's so many opportunities. And it is happening in certain ways, like there's Avatar Innovations that's working with Innovate Calgary's Energy Transition Center. There's lots of like Foresight Canada, lots of organizations working in this space. So I think it's coming.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. For more information on innovation and tech in the Calgary scene, visit digitaljournal.com.